Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a popular piece of online political commentary that makes two pretty big accusations against top government officials. We're going to be looking at public messaging and the very boundaries of legal authority.
So, the piece we're looking at kicks off with this really powerful statement, which translates to, we are being deceived again. We are being fooled again. Right from the get-go, this frames the entire analysis as a kind of exposé, an attempt to pull back the curtain on what's really happening. Okay, let's dive into it.
First up, the deception allegation. Now, the first big point the commentator makes is all about a presidential announcement on some high-profile corruption cases, and whether the public was really told the whole story. So the commentary immediately puts this announcement under a microscope. You've got this big address involving two really prominent political figures, and the core question being asked is, was this a genuine move in the fight against corruption, or was it just a really slick piece of PR? And this is where it gets really interesting. The commentator argues that while these two cases were presented side by side as if they were equal, the details tell a totally different story. For former Representative Zaldico, a warrant of arrest was already issued. It's a done deal. But for former Speaker Romualdez, it's just that charges will be recommended to be filed. And that right there is a massive difference. The commentator really zeroes in on this specific phrase, irekomenda balang. The key part is balang, which kind of means just or still. The argument is that this wording proves the case against Romualdez is barely getting started. And by bundling it with the Zaldico case, which is much further along, it creates what they call a misleading picture of swift, equal action. And here's the number used to back that up, 6 to 9 months. That's the timeline the ombudsman himself apparently gave for when charges against Romualdez might actually be filed. For the commentator, this is the proof. It suggests the announcement jumped the gun, that it was more about grabbing a headline than giving a real, substantive update on where things stood. Okay, let's switch gears to the second big point in this commentary. We're looking at the bend the law confrontation in the Senate. Here, the spotlight moves away from the president and shines directly on the ombudsman during a pretty heated hearing. So this is the quote that set everything off. You can bend the law, but not break it. This statement, attributed to the ombudsman, just lit a fire on the Senate floor. It became the absolute center of a really tense back and forth, with lawmakers pushing back hard. So when Senator MARCOLETA called him out on it, what was the explanation? Well, the official line was that it was just a figure of speech. The idea was that he didn't literally mean it. It wasn't supposed to be taken as some deep statement of legal philosophy. But as the commentary points out, Senator MARCOLETA wasn't having it. His counterargument was basically, hold on a second. How is anyone, the public, other lawyers, supposed to know when you're being literal versus when you're just using colorful language? And that's a serious point, right? When the nation's top graft investigator says something that sounds, flexible, it can really muddy the waters and erode public trust. All right, next section, announcing the warrant. The commentary argues that this bend the law idea isn't just a one-off comment. They connect it directly to another action from the ombudsman, going public with a timeline for when he expects court warrants to be issued. So what's the connection here? Well, the commentary presents this as a perfect example of that same controversial mindset in action. It's framed as the ombudsman may be operating in a legal gray area, pushing the envelope and potentially overstepping the very clear boundaries of his job. And this slide really gets to the heart of the legal argument. The process is supposed to be crystal clear. Step 1, the ombudsman files a case. Step 2, the court, all on its own, looks at the evidence. And Step 3, only the court can actually issue that warrant. So the argument goes, when the ombudsman starts predicting timelines, it looks like he's jumping the gun, stepping on the court's turf, and blurring that really important line, separating their jobs. And this is where the commentator claims things get really dicey. Think about it. If the ombudsman says, I expect a warrant by Friday, and then, boom, the court issues one on Friday, what does that look like to the public? It could easily look like the court was influenced. And that, the commentary warns, is a dangerous proposition that could threaten the core idea that our courts are independent. So, after going through all that, what does this all mean? Let's wrap up and look at the big takeaways from this piece of political commentary. So, you really have two core criticisms here. First, there's the political messaging, framing the president's announcement as a PR move that might be hiding the real story. And second, there's the question of legal propriety, putting the ombudsman's statements under a microscope and raising concerns that he might be blurring some serious legal lines. At the end of the day, what this commentary is really doing is calling for some healthy public skepticism. It's basically saying, hey,
don't just take the official story at face value. It's a push for everyone to dig a little deeper than the headlines, which is a pretty important part of being an informed citizen, right?
And that leaves us with this huge question, doesn't it? In today's world, when you have the official government statement on one side and this kind of critical commentary on the other, offering a totally different take, how do you figure out what's really going on? How do we all sort through these clashing stories to get to the truth?